Yes, running it straight here on SENZ, talking rugby league up until 3 p.m. Myself, Sammy Hilt, alongside Anthony Galling, a former Warrior himself, in what is the final 3 weeks of the NRL for 2024, and a big game for the Warriors this Friday night as they take on the Bulldogs at what is now Shan Johnson Stadium for the weekend, given that it is SJ's last home game and emotions will be flying. We'll talk a little bit about SJ throughout the show. Someone that we're going to get on in about 10 minutes' time is a teammate of his and someone who's played many, many years alongside the number 7. That is Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. I think first time on running it straight, Jello. So Roger's going to join us in between his trainings and his meetings this afternoon. We will have a look at that Warriors-Bulldogs game, have a look at some of the other games across round 25. There are some tasty ones as well, some big storylines with players out and injuries, etc., as we move towards the finals football. Mathematically, the Warriors are out, so that season's done and dusted. But in terms of all the other teams, there are spots up for grabs, and it's the business end of the season. But Jello, starting as we always do, looking back over the weekend and Seagulls Warriors on was that Friday night, Saturday night? I'm getting lost. I think it was Friday night. And
Friday, yeah.
We sort of, I feel like it went the way we predicted. You might even predicted a close scoreline to that. I think you might have said 28-12 or something. It's 24-10. So I think you got pretty close. But so I guess it played out the way we expected it to play out. We thought the Seagulls would be a little bit too strong. It was, I would say, near full strength for Andrew Webster. And look, just the same old problems that we've seen from the team in 2024. Lots of time in the red zone, lots of dominating the run meters, dominating the post contacts, dominating the field position, but not enough points to show for it against a Manly team that defensively isn't one of the best teams in the comp.
Nah, just a lot of drop ball. Every time the team seems to get down there into the red zone, there's a lot of errors, and then that frustration creeps in. And then when you get frustrated, you change the way you play. You might go a little bit safer or, pull things in a bit. But that rain was a big factor too. I noticed at one point in the game, it was like they were just playing between the two scrum lines.
Yeah, it's true.
Like you couldn't get any width on the pass, so everything was just squeezed right up. But yeah, I think a lot of people predicted that that's the way their game was going to go. The little bet that I threw out there before the game, it was Dallin and Jason Saab to combine for 2 or more tries. So they had that in the first half. Yeah. And then it was Warriors with an 11.5-point head start.
Close.
Close, very close. I think they scored right, and it was a Ruben Garrick penalty in the 79th minute. But I think that would have been gone anyway.
I think I had a pretty good one as well. I think it was Saab, Tom, Dallin, Seagulls, and
Tom Ali?
No, sorry, Tom Trebojevic.
Oh, okay.
And there was maybe I had Tom to score a double. I missed out by one thing. It was brutal. But this one was an interesting one for me, Jello. Towards the end of the season, where most people would park the expectation that we were going to play finals football. So, had this sort of game happened midway through the year, it would have been this big talking point that we lost, despite having all of the position out there. Feels like it's become a bit of the norm for 2024, and people were quote unquote sort of okay with it. But it's interesting to me because I genuinely think that is almost a full-strength team apart from Wade Egan. We had obviously Freddie Lussick starting. So, as close to full strength as you can get, and the team still weren't able to deliver. And there was one play in particular that sort of summed it up for me, and that was when Sean, went that pass back on the inside to Kurt Capewell that he sort of dropped, and it looked like indecision from Sean, it looked like indecision from Kurt Capewell, and it's not a criticism on either of those two, but to me it's a symptom of the attack that it just hasn't been fluid, it hasn't been precise, and like I said, you can get all of the field position. The forwards can rumble down, they can get 70 metres in a set, put us in a great position, but then we're not able to convert, and it is frustrating. I can't really put my finger on it, and there's people that sort of lay the blame at Shan Johnson's feet, but look, I feel like it's been a similar story even when Sean's not in the team.
I think, because you say full-strength team, but you look at how many of those players are actually like healthy, playing their best footy. And I think there's a lot of guys playing injured. I don't think Dylan Walker's been himself for a long time. No. He's been limping around quite a few games. And then Shawnee as well, I don't think he was 100%.
Oh, of course.
He had his quad strapped up.
Yep.
If that run threat's not there from him, then it trickles down.
Funnily enough, our forwards have been pretty healthy though. Like Adam, Mitch.
I think there's still a bit of fatigue that sets in. I remember Mitch had that he was just a whirlwind period around that Origin 3 where he just played big minutes. He killed it for us.
Yeah.
I had like 2 big games in Origin 3, then backed up and killed it again in that Canberra game. And I was like, man, he can't keep doing this every week. And then there's some games where it's just like, but he's hit the wall now.
Yeah, and I do, and it's funny, isn't it? Like a bye, when you're in finals contention, a bye in round 27 looks very, very tasty. When you're battling, you want that bye. Like I want that bye in round 22. Give us the break, give us the fresh legs. Another interesting point that I raised with Aish before the commentary, I went sort of and crunched the numbers on all the different combinations that the Warriors have sort of put out in the back line this year. And, 5 combinations of wingers, 7 combinations of centres, and 5 combinations of halfback of the halves. Not only that, but when you talk changes from week to week, so you might have, like for example, RTS and Montoya on the wing, but then the next week you've got DWZ and Montoya, and so it's 2 combinations, but it's changed from week to week. So for halfbacks, we've had 8 changes, so 8 weeks of
to the
not
combination
the same.
itself.
So, for example, it might be Chanel and Sean for 3 weeks, but then it changes from Sean to Mighty, and that might last 3 weeks, and it changes. It changed 8 times. For the centres, at 11 weeks of change, and for the wingers, 13 weeks of different combinations. So I talked about the consistency. And here's the thing, Manly, every team deals with the injuries and every team deal with the inconsistency, and Manly weren't far off. Like they had 6 winger combos, 5 centre combos, but for them, they've had just 3 halves pairings, but they've only changed their halves 4 times. So it started with Brooks and DCE. There was one game where it was Brooks and Lawton when DCE was out for Origin, and there's one game where it was Brooks and Humphreys where DCE was out for Origin. But outside of that, it's been Brooks and DCE the whole season.
Oh, so you're only talking about Origin that it makes those numbers go up.
Correct. So you take Origin away, they could.
Yeah, for us it's 6 or 7 week periods where someone's out.
Someone's injured.
Lukey Metcalf, how long was he gone? 16 weeks.
So he played 4 weeks and then he was gone. 3 or 4 weeks, and then round 24. So he was gone. Then it was Tamaiti and Sean. Then there was CNK and Tamaiti in Brisbane. That was only 1 week before it went to CHT and Tamaiti for the 7 games before Sean came back, and it was CHT and Sean. Then it went to Sean and Metcalf again. So
how do you build any consistency on the back of that?
That's the thing, right? So I was just sort of playing devil's advocate before about the attack being clunky and not blaming any individuals like Sean, and a lot of people do. They say, Sean, he's trying to play both sides, and where's Chance popping up and all that. And it's just, there's something we can ask Roger, like, how hard is it to build consistency when you have so much change? And like I said, every team goes through change. I totally understand that, but I think it's fair to use that as a, if you're trying to find an explanation for why the attack hasn't been as fluid this year, I think it's a valid reason.
What else is in your little box of excuses there, mate?
Let me have a little... Too much travel. Referees. We can talk referees. Australia conspiracy. I've got that one listed under... That's in a separate file. That's a 1 gigabyte file.
That's a very good point. I'd like to see where the teams that did struggle this year, if their numbers kind of match up with that as well.
I would love to go through it. Like I said,
I think it would. If you looked at some of those teams that haven't fired this year, I think they'll be the same. Like the Titans, I know they've chopped and changed halves and injuries and people moving around. Bunnies, definitely. Bunnies, 100%.
Huge injuries, right? And big names too, like Latrell. I think Cody Walker's out this week too for them.
Eels as well, losing their main guys. And
you look at Melbourne, like they were without Cam Munster.
But you got Wishart coming in.
Yeah, Panthers have been out without
Wishart, and then someone else, and then someone else, and then.
Yeah, that's true. They at least they had the consistency with injury, which is a great point to make.
Even with Panthers are the same. But they lose Cleary, and then it's the same.
I've always said that. One of the number one advantages or number one things in your favour for trying to win an NRL comp is fitness. And the Warriors had that last year. Yep. We had very few injuries or we didn't have this situation last year, and it makes a huge difference. Like you look at a team, one of the teams that's been the fittest in 2024 from a key position point of view, so hooker, halves, fullback, centres, whatever, team that's been the most injury-free and arguably the most consistent team in 2024.
Doggies.
Yeah. It's Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Like people were looking at them going like, how can they from that last year to this year? And they're consistent every single week, even if they're losing. It's golden points or they're keeping it close. They have had one of the most consistent teams. They've had Burton. in the halves basically the whole year. They've had Crichton and Cherry in the centres. They've had Tracy at the back. They've had, Reid Marnie's basically played every game at hooker. So, it's a consistent squad, makes a massive difference. And I'll just, further reiterate, because there'll be people that are going to come at me for this. It will further reiterate that you can't use it as an excuse as to this season we just had all these injuries and that's why we lost. There are other things going on, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying you can't write it off as a valid reason why it hasn't been as good as we may have thought it was going to be.
I think you got to look at that too. So if you look at players, right, and you look at a player's attributes and you go, all right, ball player, speed, kick game, all these things. Surely by now where the competition is at, durability has to be on that list. Like a player that can play through a season without being in and out constantly with injuries. And, you look at the players that we lost last year. Did we undervalue Josh Curran and what he brought to the table? Because every time we had an injury, he would step up in back row, lock, played hooker a couple games. He could just play anywhere and do anything. Point. And that's what he's doing for the Doggies this year, is he's showing up every week and doing a job. Yep,
and he can start, he can come off the bench. Yeah. That's a good point, Jello.
And the Doggies seems to be filled with guys like that.
Yeah, yep, I agree. I feel like on paper we have that.
I'm sorry, Josh, come back.
Dylan Walker, etc. But it's just unfortunate they've found themselves injured this year too.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, so 24-10, the Warriors go down to the Seagulls. The season is over for them from a finals point of view. 2 games to go, Bulldogs and then the Sharks, and then they get the round 27 bye. As I mentioned, not ideal when the season's basically done. You don't really want that bye in the last round. But that's all she wrote, 24 points to 10. Just before we take a break, Jello, I guess a couple of stories we're following this week. Shan Johnson's last game on Friday night at Go Media Stadium, or Shan Johnson Stadium. A couple others though. Jazz Tavanga, he'll play his last home game at the club this Friday. And I know Jazz. I saw the story yesterday on TV. Like, he's upset about, he wanted to be a one club man, and he, to me, does epitomise the Warriors of the last 6 or 7 years. He's been here the whole time. He's a bit of a grinder. He's had to work very, very hard for spots on the team. And then, of course, it'll be Adam's last home game as well. So it's got a little bit more this Friday than just a last home game of the season type vibe.
Yeah, for sure. I think I know Sean will take a lot of that spotlight. Yeah. But it's a very sad day, especially losing people like Jazz. Like, he is the heart and soul of that club, and so many fans get behind him. He's just one of the boys, and he's always been one of the boys. He's the way that he's carried himself from the time he's made his debut till now. He's still just one of the boys. That's what I love about him. He'll definitely be missed. And I don't know. I think with Adam, like with him putting his hand up to leave earlier, I don't think he'll be missed as much. I think people are like, well, if you want to go,
people have moved on a little bit.
Yeah, I think people kind of won't be as sad to see him go.
What do you think, if you can try and put your finger on the rationale of, letting Jazz go? Is it the fact that you've got some of these youngsters coming through, whether they're going to play 13 or not, or that utility role that Jazz plays, but your Leckers, your Sifakulas, etc. Is it a matter of, hey, we've just got young guys coming through that are probably going to out sort of do you, or is it a matter of the Warriors thinking that Jazz isn't the guy that they want moving forward? Like, how do you sort of see?
Possibly. I think if you look at him over the last 2 years, like he's been injured a lot. Like, he's missed a lot of time with injury, and I think it's kind of like a Josh Curran situation where you've got a player there, but you want someone who's a specialty in this role and a specialty in this role, and then you've got a guy that's he's just a jack of all trades, and you think, well, we don't want you taking up a spot in our top 30 if we can have an out-and-out back row or an out-and-out front rower. That's what we need. But I think... Yeah,
which is funny because
I think utilities like that, they're so precious, man, because Jazz is, again, he can play lock, he can play hooker, he can play back row, he can tackle his ass off wherever he is.
Which is funny when you talk about, like, they want a specialist. Like, they made Jazz that, right? Like, I remember talking to him and he said, my number one role is a hooker. But, we've turned him into this utility that plays all over the park.
And then you turn around and go, oh, mate, you're a bit...
you're too diverse. We need
someone who's a bit, out and out. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what the decision is behind it, but...
I agree with you. He's a fan favourite. Yeah, he'll be missed. He'll be farewelled by the faithful on Friday, no doubt. alongside SJ. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on when we preview the Bulldogs game. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, he is going to join us very, very shortly here on Running It Straight. If you have any questions, you can text her on 8833. We will pose those to the man himself. RTS, first time on Running It Straight with us. So we'll take a short break, and when we come back, it'll be RTS on the other side. Running straight here on SENZ. Great to have you along with us talking rugby league up until 3 p.m. before we hand over to the run home. But we have a very special guest on the line now, Jello.
Mr. Sweet Feet himself, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. How are you, brother?
Hey, fellas. Going good. Hope all is well there.
Where are you right now? What are you doing?
I'm just in between prep and meetings. So we're at Mount Smart Stadium. About to have a meeting about our Friday night game. Just prepping at the moment.
You mean Shan Johnson Stadium, Rog? You got to get
Shan Johnson Stadium.
Shan Johnson Stadium,
That's
mate.
it.
What's you're talking about some of the prep that you guys have been doing? Like, what's I guess the feeling this week with the added emotion of saying goodbye to Sean at home and saying goodbye to Jazz and add in, like, is that sort of fed into some of that meeting type stuff, training stuff you guys have been doing?
Yeah, for sure. Everyone's in high spirit at the moment. We've firstly accepted where we sit this season, and we've got 2 more games to enjoy ourselves with some quality players that are leaving us. So it's all about just enjoying the moments now. And yes, of course, we've got a job to do. We're professional athletes, but the theme is just enjoy and go out there and try to get a win for the boys that are having their final games, and of course Shan Johnson at Shan Johnson Stadium.
Shan Johnson. Hey, you talk about the guys that are leaving. What's the kind of feeling with you, Co? So last year, you see the boys, they're rampaging and they're in the top 4 looking at final footy. And then this year, it just hasn't really gone to plan. Do you feel like that window has, not closed, but changed now? Do you think there's a bit of a reset and are kind of going to have to come up with a new plan to get back to where things were last year?
I guess so, bro. And it's, watching from last year, I was excited and I was coming in as maybe 1 or 2 new signings, so it had the same core group of players. So, and next year it's going to be the same feel. There's going to be a handful of players come and go, but most of us are the core in our system are all still in play. It's just making sure that we all just do better next year. Because we fell off and we fell short too many games this year, and that we had so many opportunities to be in a different situation than we are today, but. I'm just excited for that, just to do better next year and see how we go.
That's the one, man. Hey, just on a personal note, what's the biggest motivation for Roger at the moment? So you've played for the All Blacks, you've played for the Kiwis, you've done so many things in the game already. What is the one thing you want to tick off, or is there more than one thing you want to tick off before your time's up?
Oh man, it's tough to go past the one thing that no one has done yet, and that's bring a premiership to the Warriors.
Yep.
And bring it to the only club here in New Zealand. That's a big achievement in itself, and I'm not looking too far. That one, that's already a big goal for me. So hopefully, if I can be part of that team that brings the Warriors its first premiership, because I've been here and I've invested my time here for so long, I'd love to finish like that.
I guess when you talk about leading, Rog, and you just mentioned, you've been here for a number of years now. Like, how has that responsibility changed for you over the years from a leadership point of view? Now that you're a little bit older, you've got a lot of young guys in that team as well. How do you take on a bit of that leadership role? Are you a talker? Is it on-field stuff? How do you try and motivate those young guys?
Yeah, it's funny because it's a lot different for me this time around, because last time I was here, I was captain for the 5 years. I was sitting in the front. I was leading the meetings. I was trying to push the energy. I was trying to get everyone hyped. But now I get to sort of sit back and watch the new crew come through and lead in their way, and I get to just try and make sure that I'm bringing out my best, and I talk to the young boys. So I feel like I'm enjoying it a bit more because there's no huge responsibilities on me. I get to just be myself and try and lead through my actions and sort of hype up the guys around me, where I'm not trying to lead a whole club,
Hey, I know a lot of the attention is going to be on Sean this week with it being his last game. But how much of a hole is Jazz going to leave? Like, not just on the field, but personality-wise and as a character. Like, what's it going to be like to not have that guy around the place?
Yeah, no, he's already pumping himself up. Like, he should be getting more of a recognition. Jazz Tivanga Stadium, that's what he's pushing. He's been a one club man, but no, like you said, it's going to be tough seeing Jazz leave. I think what he brings off the field is massive. And, he just gives a lot of the boys confidence. Because, like you say, you look at Jazz, he's not the perfect footballer, the perfect athlete, but he allows the boys to be himself and you really go after it. And that's what Jazz is all about, just a mongrel out on the field, and he's same like that off the field too. So he's going to be missed.
Well, Sammy, what do you reckon? Like, we have our SENZ marquee before the game. Should we rename that the Jazz Tavanga?
We can rename the marquee the Jazz Tavanga marquee. Or I was thinking, if it's Shan Johnson Stadium, could we give Jazz maybe the north end of the ground, the bank?
He's more of a south. He's
our south stand, of course. That's remiss of me. Hey, Rog, look, a question that I know you've been absolutely hammered with all season long, and I don't want to hatch it out, just about the transitioning to the centres and how that's been for you and some of the challenges. The thing I wanted to ask you about, me and Jello were talking about earlier in the show, just all the changes this year, right? Particularly with the centre combinations, the wingers, but also the halves. We've gone through so many iterations with injuries. How challenging has that been for you? Not only coming into a position that you weren't totally familiar with, but sort of week to week having to play with someone different on the inside and the outside.
Yeah, the toughest thing is trying to develop my own game personally. If I'm a right centre, I want to work on, I need to get my left fend out right, arm offload. I need to, like Jello would understand, I want to be better my left side, inside shoulder tackle, but then, you're trying to build that development, but then you get pushed over to left wing, and then I've got to drop back, I've got to catch, I actually got to carry with my left arm now, right arm. So just, it's been more tough on my own development as a player for myself. And so for me, it's all about just building combinations and making the guys inside and outside me feel comfortable. But I think the toughest thing is just developing my game and see if I can make myself better each week, where at the moment it's just making the line feel comfortable with a new player there, Hey,
one more question. I don't want you to be late for your next meeting or whatever you got next, so this is my final question for you. It's a bit of a true or false, okay? So I heard this story. I don't know if it's true or not. You tell me. But apparently there was a Gumboot Friday promo, and you couldn't do it because you can't put your calf muscles in gumboots. Is that true or false?
Oh, man, I think that's false. False. I don't know where this came from.
Oh, so
you said it was true.
Extra large red bands, though, Roger. I believe it, to be honest.
Low-cut gumboots.
I don't know how you get those things in a pair of gumboots, but there you go. Actually, one more from me, Jello. Something that we love to ask players when we get them on, and we love to do it with the former players as well. When you're out there, and maybe you want to pick a centre because that's the position you've been primarily playing, but maybe just across your career, who's the one player that you sort of see almost as like a bit of a rival, like a guy that you stand across from that motivates you to just want to go at them and play some of your best rugby league? Is there someone that sticks out?
Well, there's not really anyone that sort of that sticks out. You just go with who's the best at the time, and I think you can't go past players like Joey Manu or Stephen Crichton, who actually were playing this week. So you just go after the guys who are counted as the best in their position. So, and for this moment, I think those are the two form centers. So, yeah.
Nice.
So are you marking up on Crichton, or is he right for them?
Nah, he's on the other side.
That would have been a dream matchup.
Just drift over a little bit from time to time.
Go jam on the left, just test yourself.
Who knows, mate? Who knows? Team could change again on the weekend. You never know.
Never know if Webby loves throwing a curveball at us. Hey, Roger, really do appreciate your time, mate. Know you're busy. Know this week's been full on for you, mate. Actually, just as a parting note, mate, just Shan Johnson, you've played with him a lot over the years. He's a club legend. I know you're going to go down as a club legend as well, mate. Is there anything you just want to say about Shawnee before we let you go?
No, not much on Shan. I think everyone knows the love that we have for him. We've got a lot of love and respect for Shan Johnson, and we just hope to farewell him on a good note and play some good footy for him, and then get around him after the game and after the next two games. So Shan, lots of love for him. Awesome, Roger. Do appreciate you coming on, my friend. Good luck on Friday and next week for the Sharkies as well, mate. Let's hope we finish the season strong.
Nice one, Dodge. Appreciate you, man.
No, thanks, team.
Roger Tuivasa-Sheck joining us here. Great to have him on, Jello. Like I said, I think it's the first time we've had him on, and you can tell that they're really wanting to send Shawnee Jazz and Eden out on the right foot on Friday, and with as he admits, knowing the season's done and dusted, but wanting to finish the season strong. So
I know, and it's sad because those two, they are they've played a lot of footy together, Sean and Rog. You know, they are a bit of a dynamic duo.
Yeah.
I remember my time there because they were always like the cash money guys, you know, the marquee players. We used to go out for a drink sometimes, and we'd have like a little team kitty or whatever. And if that ran out, it would be, all right, boys, Shawnee and Rog, paper, scissors, rock, who's putting another 1,500 on the bar?
That is great. Oh, that is good. And I thought it was interesting too, just Rog talking about some of those challenges he's faced with like just developing himself personally when he's moving around positions and that. It's quite interesting. I think next year he's going to be better for this year, Roger. You know, I think this year he'll put in the rearview mirror, and 2025 he'll come out firing. May even get a glimpse of it on Friday against if he switches sides against Stephen Crichton. We'll see. Webby loves those changes. All right, we'll take our final break here on SENZ. Sorry. We'll take a break here on SENZ. When we come back, we'll have a look at that game on Friday night against the Bulldogs, as well as the other games across round 25. It's Running It Straight here on SENZ. Well, welcome back in to Running It Straight here on SENZ. Sammy alongside Anthony Gallen. Great to have Roger on just before the break, Jello. And if you missed that chat, you can go check it out on the podcast channels on SENZ League. Right, but we're going to have a look at this Friday's game between the Bulldogs and the Warriors. It is live from Shan Johnson Stadium. It's a farewell for a couple of Warriors who won't be with the club in 2025. That is Adam Whanua, Blake Jazz Tavanga, Shan Johnson. Those are the ones we know about. And Shawnee will no doubt take a lot of the limelight. And when these two teams met back in round 18, it was, of course, that Golden Point loss, 13 points to 12, the no call on Tamati Martin. And
great game.
Subsequent apology.
Was that the game of the season, maybe?
It'll be up there.
Debut?
It was a hectic game, wasn't it? A lot of defence. I remember it being, very, very defensive. So I guess, like we were talking about at the top of the show, Jello, the Bulldogs are probably the most consistent team in 2024. They, when they drop games, it's not by a lot. They have the best defensive record in the competition. I think that's probably the key for this matchup, isn't it? You've got an attack in the Warriors that isn't firing as well as it did last year, up against one of the best defence. And someone actually asked me this morning, they just said, almost with a rejection on their face, how do we crack the Bulldogs' defence? So
I know no one else has. Even, this is how I know they're a good defensive team. The Dolphins put 30 points on everybody. Even if they lose the game, Melbourne, they went 30 points. Penrith, everybody, they score 30. Doggies hold them to 10. That's very, very hard to do. Yeah, and they ran away with it. And I think their attack comes off the back of the defence. I won't run through the full team lists for you. You can find those out online. What do you got head-to-head there? Yeah, so this is Sofascore.com. It's really good for stats. So the last 20 games these two teams have met, it's 10-10. Oh, but that's a Doggies. That's a period of a Doggies team as well that was pretty garbage, right? Like, you look at this. This is a completely different Doggies team this year. So let's just dissect. We usually sort of go through the teams and the key matchups, but let's just dissect some of the personnel for the Doggies, Jello, and they've got so many guys in that team that aren't as flashy on paper, and this is a very Penrith thing, isn't it? Like Connor Tracy at the back, who's got a great try-scoring record, but he's not thought about as a James Tedesco or a Tom Trebojevic or the like. No, not at all.
They've got Burton and Sexton, the halves, who are playing great football. You mentioned Josh Curran earlier. Reid Marnie's sort of fallen away a little bit, but that forward pack has so much punch in their bench as well. But one name you want to bring up, and it's sort of funny because we talk about him a lot, Stephen Crichton, and the kind of leader he is. I know Ace thinks he's the best centre in the game, but he's not on any of the sort of player of the year
so when
shortlists.
You have a look at all those Dally M lists, the SEN guys from Aussie, some of the bloke lists and stuff like that. Nothing, no Stephen Crichton at all, which boggles my mind because not only I think he's the best player in the comp. Yeah. Hands down. I don't think he's just the best centre. I think he's the best player in the comp.
That's a big call.
And you look at what he's done with the Doggies this year. You look at what he done with Penrith before that. You look at what he done with New South Wales. Like, he is the man. He is the man. Attacking, defenses, does it all. And you look at some of those games with the Doggies and he just takes the game like in his own hands and he'll set up the try assist. He'll chase down the kick and win the high ball and get the offload and then come up with these try savers at the other end. If he wasn't at the Bulldogs this year, it would be a completely different story. Yeah, he's a big time player and a great leader as well, right? Leadership's something that he's still young. Like, you forget how young he is, and he's a captain of the Bulldogs.
Yep. So I feel like it's a similar conversation to what we had in round 18, Jello. But what What are the keys here? How does a team break down a defence like the Bulldogs? How do the Warriors break down a team like the Bulldogs, and sort of vice versa? What have the Warriors got to make sure they do defensively?
Well, I think if you look at the last time these two teams played, like, it was very evenly matched. I think that was one of the best performances from the boys this year. Like, you look at who went off that game, the amount that they had
shifts.
to reshuffle.
Yeah.
Like, there were some real heroic performances that we highlighted. Jackson Ford, Mitch Barnett, Dylan Walker, like, guys that just absolutely emptied the tank to get the win. Didn't get the result, but I think if we have any chance of getting it done this weekend, it's going to take the same amount of effort. I think you have to beat these guys on effort. You can't beat them on the flashy stuff.
So what do you reckon? What's your prediction for Friday?
I think with emotions running higher, I don't think the boys are going to want to roll over for Shawnee. I think if they're going to show up for a game at all this year, it'll be this game. With no finals to play, this will be the game. Last home game. Guys leaving, I think they're going to show up, and I think the boys are going to get it done. Doggies have been on a nice little win streak. I think they're 4 from their last 5, maybe more than that if you look at their last 10. But I think every team that's heading into finals, you have that little week off or that little trip up just before you get there. So, I don't think Doggies would mind losing too much. I know a lot of teams say, we don't want to peak too early and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's a good point. That is a good point.
Sometimes, it's nice just to pick up that loss and they'll, learn some lessons and talk about it.
So is it fair to say that you're basing the prediction off, like the emotion, the motive aspect of it, as opposed to, I guess the personnel or how we've been playing? You just think that, given the occasion, given the milestones, the players leaving, that it'll be
Yeah, for sure. And I honestly believe that's half the game. Like, everyone talks about the X's and O's and the personnel. Like, that's a big part of it. But if you could have the best team on paper, if they can't get up for the game, they're going to get beaten.
Yep.
And you could have a team that's not good on paper, but, they're fighting. You see it all the time in Canberra. How many teams go to Canberra and get beaten?
Yeah.
Canberra's not the best team on paper.
And they're roller coaster as well.
Yeah, but they know how to, like, the games that they show up for, they'll win them.
Yeah.
That's the power of the emotional factor.
We mentioned last week, like, the injury toll, and I'll ask this in 2 parts. So firstly, how much of the injuries should come back to the way that the boys train and the workload and potentially the reps that they're having to go through? And you talk about that motivation. How much of that's on Andrew Webster? Like, to get a team, like you said, a team good on paper, to get them into the right mind frame. Is a lot of that on the coach, or should the responsibility fall on the players?
I think it definitely falls on half. Yes, it's the coach's job to make sure his team's fired up. Are you picking the right team? Are you picking guys in your team that are gonna do the job? And then looking towards the next year, are you recruiting guys that are gonna come in with that attitude to show up for games like this? So that's where the coach's job and selection. But it's got to be on the players as well. Like, if you're getting picked to do a job, like, you better fire up and do the job.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you. We're probably going to do a full season review at the end of the year, at the end of the season, Jello. But if I could just ask you, in the context of this game, where do you think the Warriors are weakest on the park? And when I say weakest, as in where's a spot that needs to be either shored up, whether it be personnel, whether it be tactical, strategic, whatever. Where do you think they're suffering the most around the park?
I think it's a number 9 role. I think with the head knocks and stuff that Wade gets, like, Wade's awesome, but I think with the head knocks that he's been getting, I think maybe he's just backing off a little bit. And then we've got Freddie that comes in. He's not a big body. Like, he's good. I love Freddie, but he's not a big body.
Yeah.
Like, if you really want to knock down the middle, like, not just defend it, but, like, really push teams back and get in and whack people, I don't think he's the guy. I think he's great off the bench and, have a little energy boost. But I think they need a strong defensive 9.
I think Freddie
just to lock the middle up.
I think Freddie defensively is okay. No, like,
he's okay, but I mean, if you want to be dominant.
Yeah, I get you. Like, I've always said that world-class hooker wins a comp, although, Mitch Kenny for Penrith and Billy Walters for Brisbane are exactly, world-class, but their teams are getting close. All right, Frank Energy Assessment. Frank Assessment, thanks to Frank Energy, selling it to you straight. Like I said, we'll review this all at the end of the season. But what will be your enduring memory? Now that they're not going to make finals football, what will be your sort of enduring memory of 2024? How do you assess it?
I'd say it would be I don't know. It's a year of frustration. It's the year of almost.
Yeah.
You know, all those games, the almost, the nearly year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you confident enough to sort of say out loud that you think it's just a one-off thing? Or do you think Warriors fans may need to be a bit patient here? This could take a couple of years.
You need to wait and see what the halves come up with next year.
With no Sean, yeah?
With no Sean, without an out-and-out leader in the halves, will these guys that are there now, will they step up and do the job?
So you're going to keep your powder dry until...
What's your thought on it?
I think Warriors fans probably do need to recognise when, and Cam George has spoken about this, when Webby came in at the end of 2022, heading into 2023, off the back of one of the worst seasons we've ever had, the expectation was that this is going to take some time. They're building the junior programs. They're bringing back SG Ball. They're bringing back, cup teams, etc. And over the years, we'll bring in the Harold Matts. We'll bring in the NRLW, whatever it might be. And on paper, you're looking at the Penrith plan saying, it's 5 years minimum. It could be 5 to 10, with the hope that in that time you will become a consistent, dominant, top of the table team. The problem for the Warriors was that they just had last year lift the bar. The expectation. And Cam George said, we got a window that we didn't think we'd have. Where Sean's playing his best football, Tohu's playing some of his best football, Wade Egan's playing some of his best football. We have this team that, and Mitch Barnett steps up that can, on paper, make a push. And they made a push last year, and they went, Cam George said this, went all in on this year. They got Roger, they got Chanel Harris-Tavita. They wanted to make a big push for this year, and it didn't work out. Now, from a fan's point of view, your expectation rose up to here very, very quickly with Andrew Webster, with the club, and you're expecting them to do what they did last year regularly and consistently. But I just wonder if last year was an anomaly, and we are still, I guess, sitting down here with, for me, a very bright future ahead. And we've still got guys like Roger locked in for a couple of years. Tohu's going to go next year as well. And bringing in James Fisher-Harris. We got Jet Cleary. So, the future is very, very bright. But we probably need to be resigned that next year, that squad on paper, to me, is like maybe a 9 to 13 type roster. It's not bottom of the table. It's not top, but it's sort of maybe just outside the 8. But that, in 5 years, that's going to turn around. But that's going to require a lot of patience. It's going to require people to understand that, 2023 is not going to happen next year, I don't think.
So this is
the reminder. As always. Yeah, it's the reminder.
This is the reminder that this is a 5-year plan, not a...
Correct. It's not a quick fix.
Yeah, it's going to happen straight away. And you don't want a quick fix. You want a 5-year plan that's going to last, and then the success that goes and goes and goes.
Look at the Cronulla Sharks, right? Like any team, not any team, but teams can win a comp in a one-off year. Like the Cronulla win in 2016, right? And that was it for them. They've won that one title. Think about Souths. Back in 2013, 2014. You can win these one-off titles, but it doesn't actually... It
doesn't count when all the signings leave and you've got nothing.
Yeah, and that's what Penrith have done a great job of sort of keeping the wheel turning when they lose those signings. But you want to me, the best benchmark isn't a Penrith that win 3 titles in a row, because that's just ridiculous. But it's more of the Melbourne, Sydney Roosters, where for say 10 years you've got a team and a squad, a core group of players that can be consistently challenging for titles. You win, more than you lose type thing when it comes to grand finals, and you build a base around some good players. And for that, you need, star halfbacks, you need star fullbacks, you need star number 9s. But we only unearth those by developing those juniors underneath. So that, I guess that's my outlook on it, Jello. I don't think next year is going to be another 2023, put it that way.
I think top 8's possible.
It's possible, 100%. Yeah. And I'm happy, like I said, I want to be proven wrong on the prediction of them not being a top 14 for sure. But you think with that. I actually went through our ladder predictions. I sent an email to myself at the beginning of the season, and it's embarrassing. Bulldogs down the bottom,
Dragons down the bottom.
Rabbitohs top 4. Got that one horribly wrong. But that's the NRL. That's what makes it great. You get all these surprises, and it's why we keep watching. Just quickly, having a look at some of the other games across round 25. Seagulls Tigers tomorrow night at 9:50. I think the Seagulls could put a cricket score there, and if you don't have Turbo in your fantasy team, might be time to pick them up. Broncos Eels. Yeah, it's a little bit interesting without Reece Walsh. and no Ezra Mann, but I still think, and no Payne Haas, but I still think the Broncos get done over the Eels. Raiders, Panthers, once again, I mean, question mark over what they'll dish up without Nathan Cleary. Storm, Dolphins, is that an interesting one? The only one I can really see across the park is probably that Dragons-Sharks game on Sunday, with the Dragons, trying to stay in that top 8. The Dolphins, who play before them, trying to chase them down against the Sharks, who are trying to stay inside the top 4. I mean, is that the big? What is the big game outside of the Warriors?
I don't know. If you looked at all those games, where do you think an upset's brewing?
I don't know if Dragons Sharks would be considered an upset, but I can see the Dragons at home maybe getting that done. I can see, Rabbitohs Knights, because you've got two teams down the bottom. I can see that. I mean, I'd probably say the upset, if you were going to pick one, probably would be the Warriors over the Bulldogs. If you buy into that emotional thing that you're talking about.
Well, I think that same rule applies for both of these. So I think Dolphins, they could possibly do it.
Okay.
Yeah, two quite similar matchups there. Warriors Bulldogs and Storm Dolphins. So no one be picking the Dolphins to win. Storm, I think if they were going to drop a game before finals, this would be it.
And the Storm probably are one win away from wrapping. Well, they are one win away from wrapping up the minor premiership, and then you might start seeing resting and that sort of stuff. Yep. So whether or not that comes this week or next, okay. So that's what we'll pick out of those two. We'll take a break here on Running It Straight. When we come back, it is our last player in our Simpsons 13. Myself and Jello got to pick our last player to round it out. We'll give you the full teams as well. Stay with us here on Running It Straight. Running It Straight, and it has come to that time where we pick our final player in our Simpsons 13. This has been a bit of a thing that Jello came up with earlier in the season, and we've been running it all throughout the year. So I think it's my pick first this week. Not that it sort of matters too much, but I'll run through my team quickly again. Santa's little helper in the number 1, Disco Stew and Captain McAllister on one edge, Selma Bovier and Paddy Bovier on the other edge. Smithers and Apu in the halves, Nelson Muntz, Judge Schneider the front row, Moses Isaac the number 9, Snake and groundskeeper Willie the back rowers. My number 13 is Reverend Lovejoy. That's my final pick. And I'll tell you why, Jello. Because 13s are often quite boring, aren't they? Yeah. Tohu Harris, Isaiah Yeo, they're straight shooters. Yeah. They're the guys, they probably don't go out for drinks, they just go home to the family.
Yeah, you need that.
Probably a little bit religious, so I'm going to go Reverend Lovejoy.
You need that. You got a good team, man.
It's a great team. It's a strong team.
Apu Coruscant.
Trying to snap.
Apu Coruscant. All right, my team. Yes. Fullback, Lenny Leonard. Centre wing duo on the left side, Lou and Eddie, the 2 police officers. Number 4, Ned Flanders. Number 5, Sideshow Bob. In the halves, Troy McClure. And number 7, Todd Flanders. Big forward pack. We got Kearney, Bart Simpson at 9, Barney Gumble at 10, Duffman at back row, Cletus, number 13. And the final piece to the puzzle that brings it all together, Lenny Leonard's best mate, Carl Carlson, number 11.
Yeah, that's solid. You need to have the best friends.
There's some
in there.
good chemistry. There's a lot of duos. There's a lot that works in that team, and I guess now we just got to put them head to head.
All right, well, text you on 8833. Who do you think's winning that battle between the two Simpsons 13s? And we may actually dive into that next week when we've got a little bit more time, because we are running out of time. We've got to hand over to the run home. Warriors Bulldogs this Friday night, live from Shan Johnson Stadium. You can tune in here on SENZ from 6. Myself, Jello and Aish, with kickoff at 8 p.m. It is the penultimate game for the Warriors of the 2024 season. We'll see you there.
SENZ.